It was almost midnight, and I was dead tired after a long day. The road ahead stretched into darkness, and my gas gauge was flirting with empty. When I saw the glow of a gas station sign up ahead, it felt like a lifesaver. But as I pulled into the parking lot, I realized how run down the place was. The fluorescent lights flickered, and there wasn't a single car in sight. I walked in, just needing a bottle of water to keep me going. Behind the counter stood a guy, pale as a ghost, staring straight ahead. He didn't move, didn't even blink. "Hey, can I grab a bottle of water?" I asked, my voice breaking the silence. He didn't say a word. Instead, he slowly raised one hand and pointed outside. Confused, I turned to look where he was pointing. That's when I noticed something was off with my car. The back tire was completely flat. My stomach dropped. Someone had slashed it, clean, straight cut. My first instinct was to look back at the guy, but when I did, he wasn't there. The counter was empty. I walked around to check, but he was gone, the only sign of him being the creak of a door swinging shut at the back. I ran outside, hoping to see where he'd gone. My heart pounded as I scanned the area. Beyond the lot was nothing but dense woods. That's when I heard it, branches snapping in the distance. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to send a chill down my spine. I froze for a moment, staring at the woods. The snapping sound had stopped, but the silence was worse. My car was sitting there, slumped on the flat tire like a wounded animal. The glow from the gas station lights barely reached the treeline, but I swore I saw something move, a flicker, like a shadow breaking away from the darkness. I shook it off, telling myself I was just tired and jumpy. But as I turned back toward the gas station, I noticed something strange. The lights inside the building were off now. Completely. The hum of the fluorescent bulbs was gone, and the eerie silence seemed to creep up behind me, wrapping around my neck. I couldn't see the guy anymore. No sign of him anywhere. Trying to calm myself, I opened the trunk and grabbed the spare tire. That's when I heard it again. A crunch of leaves, this time closer. My hands froze mid-reach. Slowly, I straightened up and looked around, gripping the tire iron like it could actually protect me. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaky. No answer. Just the wind, rustling faintly through the trees. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone anymore. I stood there for what felt like forever, straining my ears for any sound. The night was still, but the unease was almost crushing. Every instinct in me screamed to leave, but with the flat tire, I didn't have much of a choice. I bent down, forcing my hands to stop shaking long enough to pry the jack out of the trunk. As I worked, I kept glancing toward the woods. The shadows seemed deeper now, thicker. I tried to convince myself it was just my nerves playing tricks on me. But then I noticed something, the back door of the gas station. It was slightly ajar, swinging gently in the breeze. I hadn't seen that before. My throat tightened. I crouched by the car and started loosening the lug nuts, my movements jerky and rushed. That's when I heard it again. Footsteps. This time, they weren't distant. They were coming from the other side of the car. My pulse hammered in my ears as I whipped my head around. Tire iron gripped tightly in my hand. Nothing. Just the empty lot and the faint buzz of insects in the night. But something didn't add up. If no one was there, then why did the gas station's front door suddenly creak open? The heavy glass door, the one I was sure I had pulled shut when I came out, now stood wide open, swinging slightly. I stood up, keeping my back to the car, and slowly stepped toward the open door. My eyes scanned the darkness inside, but there was no sign of the guy. No movement. Just rows of shelves and dim shadows stretching across the floor. "Hey!" I called out, my voice louder this time, more forceful. "If you're messing with me, this isn't funny." The words echoed back, mocking me with the empty stillness. I glanced over my shoulder at the woods, then back at the door. My hands clenched around the tire iron as I debated going inside to check, or just leaving the car and walking the rest of the way down the road. Then, I noticed something else. The tire wasn't just slashed, it was completely shredded, far worse than I'd thought when I first looked. Someone had gone to town on it, and there was no way it had happened while I was driving. Whoever had done this was still here, watching me, waiting for... something. My head whipped around again at the sound of movement. This time, I didn't call out. I just stood there, trying to decide what was worse: staying here in the open or stepping back into that creepy, empty gas station. I had to make a last-minute run to Walmart that night. It was around 11 p.m., and the store was mostly empty, which I liked: less hassle. I needed to grab some party decorations because, of course, I had left it all to the last second. The place felt weirdly quiet, though. Not the usual hum of life you'd expect, just the distant beep of a scanner and some faint, tinny music over the speakers. I was in the seasonal decorations aisle, deciding between some balloons and this tacky banner, when I noticed her. She was small, hunched, and wearing this floppy knitted hat that looked way too big for her head. I don't even know how she got so close without me noticing, but when I turned, she was just there. She leaned in, way too close for comfort, and whispered, "They're always watching. Don't trust anyone here." I laughed nervously, figuring she was just some eccentric old lady, and stepped back. Okay, I said, trying not to be rude. I went back to looking at the decorations, but I could still feel her eyes on me. It was unsettling, you know? That feeling like someone's breathing down your neck. I grabbed a pack of balloons and decided to head to another aisle, just to shake it off. But she followed me. I swear, every time I turned down a new aisle, she'd appear a few seconds later. She didn't say anything at first, just sort of stood there, watching. When she did talk, it was always in this low whisper, like she was afraid someone else might hear. Stuff like, "You can't trust them. None of them are real." At one point she said, "If they see you leaving, it's already too late." That one really got to me. I tried to play it cool, but my hands were shaking as I grabbed a random pack of streamers and stuffed it in my basket. I didn't even care if it matched the balloons. My main goal was to get away from her. I walked faster, heading toward the food aisles, hoping the shelves and other shoppers would give me some cover. But every time I thought I'd lost her, she'd show up again, like she knew exactly where I was going. I didn't want to make a scene. I mean, what was I supposed to say? "Hey, this creepy old lady keeps whispering at me." Nobody else seemed to notice her, or me, for that matter. The employees were busy stocking shelves, and the few other shoppers were just minding their business. Meanwhile, this woman was still muttering things under her breath, like, "They're not who you think they are, and you've already been marked." I stopped pretending to shop and headed straight for the checkout lanes. My basket was practically empty, but I figured I'd pay and leave as quickly as possible. That plan didn't last long. As I turned the corner near the registers, she was there again, standing by the candy shelves. This time, she wasn't whispering. She just stood there, staring at me with this hollow look, like she knew something I didn't. That's when I felt it, like this tight knot in my stomach. I didn't even care about paying for the stuff anymore. I ditched the basket and bolted for the door. The sliding doors felt like they took forever to open. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting her to come sprinting after me. When I finally made it outside, the air felt colder than it should have. I didn't stop running until I was inside my car with the doors locked. I sat in my car, trying to catch my breath. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles were white. My heart was still racing, pounding so loud in my ears it drowned out everything else. I kept telling myself it was fine, that I was just overreacting, that she was probably just some harmless, weird old lady. That's when I saw her. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement near the store's entrance. I turned to look, and there she was, standing under the flickering parking lot light. For a second, I felt relieved. She wasn't coming after me, just standing there. But then, like she could feel me watching her, she started moving. Not walking, running. Her speed was unnatural, her little body hunched forward as her feet pounded the asphalt. But what froze me wasn't how fast she was. It was her face. That smile. It stretched across her face, wide and crooked, like she wasn't used to smiling. Her teeth were yellowed, uneven, and there was something about the way her eyes lit up. It was like she was excited to get to me. I fumbled with my keys, nearly dropping them as I jammed them into the ignition. The engine sputtered to life just as she reached the front of my car. I don't know how, but her smile had gotten even wider, her face pressed so close to the windshield I could see every wrinkle, every crack in her lips. I didn't wait to see what she'd do next. I slammed my foot on the gas, tires screeching as I shot out of the parking lot. In the rear-view mirror, I could see her standing there, still smiling, watching me drive away. That image is burned into my brain. Even now, I can't step into a Walmart without looking over my shoulder. I don't know who she was or what she wanted, but sometimes I wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't gotten away? Black Friday. Man, I'll never forget that day in 2021. You know how wild it gets, people practically clawing at each other for deals. I was at this electronics store, hunting for a discounted smartphone. The place was pure chaos, like everyone in town decided to show up at once. While squeezing through the crowd, my wallet slipped out of my jacket pocket. I didn't even notice until a guy tapped me on the shoulder. "Hey man, you dropped this," he said, handing it back with this super friendly smile. He looked normal, mid-30s, brown hair, kind of average. I thanked him, and he just nodded like it was no big deal. Honestly, I didn't think twice about it. A couple of hours later, I was home, scrolling through my new phone settings when my bank app pinged me. Unusual login attempt detected. My stomach dropped. I froze, staring at the screen like it was some kind of mistake. But no, it wasn't. Someone was actively trying to get into my bank account. At first, I thought, nah, this has to be random, but then it hit me. That guy. The helpful dude from the store. I didn't want to believe it, but the timing was way too perfect. How the hell did he do it? That's when I started putting the pieces together. I started pacing around the room, my heart racing. How could he have gotten my info? Then it clicked. When he handed me the wallet, he must have seen my cards. I'd stupidly left one sticking out, my debit card. That split second was all he needed. Maybe he memorized the numbers or took a quick photo. It was slick, too smooth. I didn't waste time. I grabbed my phone and called the bank right away. "Someone's trying to access my account," I blurted out to the customer service rep. She asked a bunch of questions, trying to stay calm, but I could hear her typing frantically. She locked my account, but not before telling me someone had already tried to transfer money. $2,000 to some random name I'd never heard of. I felt sick. It was like this stranger had ripped open a part of my life I thought was secure. While the bank worked on freezing everything, I went straight to the police to file a report. Not that I expected much to come of it. What were they going to do? Comb through a packed store looking for a guy with brown hair and a friendly smile? That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the scene at the store. His smile, the way he handed me the wallet like he was doing me this huge favor. I even remembered thinking, wow, people aren't so bad after all. Yeah, right. Looking back, I still get chills thinking about how easily I fell for it. I mean, the guy seemed so normal, so helpful. But that's the thing. You don't expect something shady to happen in a split second. Now, I'm paranoid about everything. I lock my cards in a protective sleeve, I keep my wallet buried in my pocket, and I always double-check what's visible when I pull it out. The scariest part? This could happen to anyone. We get so distracted by the chaos around us, like Black Friday madness, that we let our guard down. That's exactly what they're counting on. So, if you're out there hunting for deals, just be careful. Trust me, a discount isn't worth the headache of someone stealing your peace of mind. Stay safe, and keep your eyes open. You never know who's watching. Thanksgiving night is supposed to feel safe, warm, you know, family, food, and all that. This year was no different, or at least that's what I thought. We were all gathered around the table, laughing, passing plates, and stuffing ourselves. My sister Emily was telling some story. Honestly, I wasn't even paying attention, when she just stopped mid-sentence. Her fork froze halfway to her mouth, and she went pale. "Who's that?" she said, pointing toward the end of the table. I turned to look, and I swear, my stomach dropped. There was this man sitting there, someone I'd never seen before. He was just eating, like he'd been there all along. His clothes were all torn up, his skin looked sickly pale, and he had these hollow eyes that didn't meet anyone's gaze. I remember asking, did someone invite him? But nobody answered. The room went dead silent. My heart started racing. I stood up and said, "Hey, who are you?" trying to keep my voice steady, but it cracked a little. He didn't even flinch, just kept chewing, then muttered, "I used to live here." That's when I felt this cold dread settle over me. "You need to leave," I said, louder this time. I reached out to tap his shoulder, and before I could touch him, bam! His plate hit the floor and he was gone. And I mean gone, like vanished. 1 second he was there, and the next, nothing. The chair was empty. Everyone else at the table swore they'd seen him too. It wasn't like I imagined it or anything. After dinner, I couldn't shake this weird feeling, so I decided to check out the basement. It's this old creepy space we hardly ever use. It's been locked for years. But when I got there, the door was cracked open. I don't know why I went in. The light barely worked, flickering like something out of a horror movie. In the corner, I saw it, a filthy rolled-up sleeping bag, a couple of empty cans, and this piece of paper. It was a note. It said, "I just wanted one more Thanksgiving." That hit me like a punch in the gut. I called the cops, and when they came, they found out this guy had been squatting in our basement for weeks, sneaking in and out through this old storm door we'd completely forgotten about. The idea of him living down there, being that close to us, freaks me out more than I can put into words. Every creak, every small sound in the house now feels wrong. Like he's still here somehow, even though I know he's not. That night changed the way I look at my own home. It's not the safe place I thought it was.